Hi, I'm James Kent from MoveData, and today we're going to work through how to implement custom business logic. The example I'm going to work through is how to implement a high-value donor flag on a contact. But the methods and the process that we're going to work through today can be used for almost all the business logic that you'd look to implement in the MoveData package. In order to complete this work, you need to have MoveData installed and configured. There are other videos and guides that can support you on doing this if you haven't already done this. Okay, so let's get started. I've already done a couple of things in advance. Namely, I have gone to the contact object and created a high value donor field. And if we look at an existing contact, Donald Duxon, you can see down here, we've gone and added that to the form. The best way to get started with implementing your business logic in MoveData is to go and have a look at some existing notifications. So we're going to work through one of these now. Let's go find Donald Duxon. Okay, so this notification's come through and we can see it's for a recurring subscription for $105. The order of execution is important in MoveData, and when working with fundraising data, it executes from account to contact to campaign to recurring to donation. These phases have to all execute in order. For example, you can't create a donation or an opportunity without creating the contact record first. So there's a fixed line of execution that we need to go through. These phases can all be seen in the execution log. So working through the execution log, we have the start of our execution for a notification, and then here we're executing through the contact phase. This will extend down to the campaign phase, to the recurring phase here, and then to the donation phase. So we can see all the phases that have data will execute in that order. So today we're going to work with the contact phase. Looking to implement a high value donor flag, we're going to say any donations greater than $200 will check a high value donor flag. To do that, we're going to execute in the contact phase, and it's pretty useful at this point to have a look at the variables that are available. So the variables that are available are digested or passed into our workflow. So when we're working in our Salesforce Lightning Flow, these are the variables that become available to us. So we're going to be looking to be working with amount. So let's have a search for that. We can see here, the donation amount here is $105. The name of the variable we're going to need to work with is donation amount. When you're implementing your own business rules, you're going to see a heap of different variables that are available. You might, for example, be dealing with foreign currencies. So you might be looking at, okay, well, whilst this is settling at $105, what was the original amount that was donated? Might want to work with the currency codes, right? You'll see the original currency that the donation was made in and what it will settle in. It's a whole raft of information, particularly around the contact. Let's just put in names. We'll see, look, we've got the first name and the last name as a variable. Whole rafts of information. This is a really good place to be able to go through it and see what's available to you in those phases. Okay, so once we've looked at the variables, the next step is to look at the fields we want to work with. Now, we know that the field we want to work with here is high value donor. We need to include that field as part of the MoveData record that is pushed through. That's important for our decision making for the MoveData engine, but also to make sure that that information is present. If that information is missing and we go to use it, we can have errors. So what we do here, let's go through to the contact. We have a thing called field sets. Now, field set used by MoveData, we've got a few here, right? We're working with the donation, so we can just add it into this one. You will all have this if you're working with donations. In here, let's search for high value donor and make sure it's added. Okay, let's save that. Now, just as an example to show you the point of difference, we've brought through an existing record here. Now I'm going to reprocess that, and we should see the high value donor record loaded into the workflow. Let's have a look. I'll reprocess now. Okay, that reprocess has been successful. Let's scroll down into the contact phase. Okay, we see we're working with Donald Duxon here. And we can see now the high value donor field is included. That means that we can use that field inside our extensions or inside our workflows. And that brings us to the next step. Let's get on with implementing our business logic. To do that, let's go into Setup, go to Flows. Now, flows are a workflow-based tool. I'll show you an existing one. We've got one already for contact. We'll create a new one as part of this, but just as an example, here's one you can have a look at. This example here is assessing, is there a phone available? If so, set it to mobile phone, set particular email addresses, determine if there is no lead source, we want to set the platform, depending on the platform, we want to send an appropriate lead source. So this is a really good example of just very basic business rules that we're looking to implement. For us, we're going to create a new one. So to do that, let's go back to the flows, click new. What we're going to use here is an auto-launched flow. These are the style of flows that are used by MoveData. Let's just choose no trigger. Okay, so we've now created our flow. Let's go and add some elements to it. Now, we're going to be implementing, if we go back to the extensions here, we're going to be implementing in this phase here, right? This action that we can see here. We can see it's part of the donation, the contact phase, and the mapping. The mapping is used for setting values before a record is saved by MoveData. What we're going to do here is in our flow, we're going to add a new variable, and that variable is called record. It is of a type called record, and the object we know is a contact. Now, the quickest way to determine what's the object type is if we go back to the execution log and scroll up, we can see the object type is specified here. Record is a reserved term by MoveData. This is how we pass around the Salesforce record before we save it to the Salesforce data store. That's available for input, so MoveData can pass it in. You can make changes in the flow, and then it's available for output, so it can leave this flow and go back to the MoveData engine. Okay, so we've now got that. Let's have a look up here at our variables. Donation amount. Let's copy that. Go back to our flow. And this is how we start working with the information that we can see in the execution log. Variable, donation amount, currency, 2 decimal places, input. Now we mark it available for input, so MoveData can move the donation amount into the flow, but we don't need to pass it back to MoveData. It's a one-way. It's used for decision making. So let's mark that as an input. Okay, now we're going to add a decision. Is high value donor? Yes. High value donor. All right, the resource. Now the resource we want to work with is donation amount. Is donation amount greater than or equal to 200? Okay. If it's a high value donor, set high value donor to true. And let's have a look at the record. Okay. Find the high value donor field. And we want to set that to true. So now we've been able to implement our business logic that will set a flag for a high value donor for a donation greater than $200. We're currently working in the contact phase, and a contact comes in many different varieties. We might be dealing with a team leader. We might be dealing with a fundraiser. We could be dealing with a recurring donor. We could be dealing with a tribute or in memory of. So it's really important that we establish the right context. We don't want to be setting this value for every contact that's part of the notification. We want to be able to limit this to an individual that has made a donation. So let's go back to the execution log that we've been working from and view the variables that are available to us. In here, we will find context variables that are available. We can see here that we've got a context for a donor, and that's marked as true because this individual, this contact, has made a donation. We can actually also see that there are also a recurring donor. So you can have multiple flags set to true, but for us, we just want to zero in on the context for the donor. So we're going to go back to our flow. We're going to implement a decision here. We're going to create our variable for context donor. That's a Boolean because it's a true false, and we're going to mark that as input so MoveData can pass that information into the flow. Our label, we're going to check is donor yes, donor, go down, context donor equals true. Okay, let's close that. Move this across a bit. Okay. We want to make sure that if this person isn't a donor, there's no more execution that needs to take place. So we're just going to mark that as an end. Here, we're seeing the decision is donor true, is high value donor true. We're going to set the high value donor to true on that contact record. Again, this will filter out using context variables. This will filter out fundraisers, tribute donations, matched donors, etc. It will only set this for people that have made a financial donation. Next, we're going to save the flow. Here I've pre-populated some information. When we work with flows, we like to implement certain naming conventions. We like to prefix these with MoveData extension, referring to the type of notification we're dealing with, the phase, and the action. Here, because I have multiple flows executing in the mapping phase, I've marked this one as high value donor. I've also gone and constructed a certain format for my API name, and we'll be using this later when we are working with the metadata to register this flow with the MoveData engine. Let's click Save and mark this flow as active. Next, we're going to navigate to the metadata. This is where we tell MoveData how to work with the flow. Let's look for metadata. In the setup screen, we're going to be working with MoveData, a MoveData pipeline setting. So let's manage those records. Let's scroll down until we find donation contact mapping, right? We already have some existing entries because this is our demo site, and you would have seen already that we had extension flows. We're going to be adding an additional one. As you can see here, the system is designed to support multiple entries. That enables you to execute multiple flows within one of these steps. We're going to open the contact mapping record. Now this here was installed as part of the NPSP extensions, the MoveData NPSP extensions. Our extensions that we make available to you guys operate the same way as one of these extension flows that we're currently building. So this is a really easy way to go and add your own or register your own flow. Open up an existing record, make sure it's for the appropriate phase that you want. Now, how do you know that's the appropriate phase? If you have a look at the execution log, we can see here at this phase here, after we've got the existing record, this is where the contact mapping phases are going to run. You can see the key required in your execution log over here. So if you've got any questions, you can look at that, or you can look in the MoveData knowledge base. There's lots of information around metadata entries. Okay, so we're going to clone this record. We're going to enter the API name of our flow. We're then going to give it a different order. Now, the way the orders work is which flow will run first. For what we're doing here, it doesn't really matter. Number 5 is taken by the MoveData authored flows. So anything that we've authored will register at 5. That gives you an ability to run a flow beforehand or to run your flows afterwards. For us, it doesn't really matter here. So I'm just going to say 7 because I did see there was an existing flow already in there. We have to give it a unique name. So let's just call it high value and let's click save. Okay, we can see the entry there. There's the flow that we're going to be calling. There's the action that will be executed. Here's the friendly name. If we go back and have a look in the pipeline, scroll down to contact mapping, you can see our entries in here now. So we're expecting there should be 3 mapping entries when we do a reprocess. Just to make sure our registration's working fine, I would recommend at this time we do a reprocess and see that the entry appears in the MoveData execution log. Okay, that's executed successfully. Let's have a look through the log, scroll down. We can see high value donors still coming through. That's good, that's as expected. And now we can see that our flow has been registered and is now executing as part of the pipeline. If we scroll down, based on the logic that we've gone and set, high value donor should be false. From this point here, let's go do a donation for a high value donor. I've navigated through to our donation site. Here we're going to put through a donation and then we'll be able to check to see how MoveData has processed this within Salesforce to ensure that the high value donor flag has been set. So let's do a donation. We will put this through a team. It will be for $500. I'll fast forward putting in these details. I'll put in a quick message and let's move forward. Let's enter our card number. Here we're going to use a test card. We're making a donation for $500 with a platform fee of $23. Let's donate. Excellent. Our donation's gone through. We'll go back to MoveData in Salesforce and see how it's processed our notification. Looking at a list of notifications in MoveData, we're going to refresh this list. And we can see there's been a successful donation for Roadrunner. Let's navigate through. If we scroll down, we'll see that it's been to the team MoveData. James Kent is the team leader. And here we've had Roadrunner as a contact. We can see that that's come through for $523. Let's take a look at the execution log. We'll see there are 2 contact entries in here. The first one will be for the team leader. Now, we can see here that that team leader is not a high-value donor. The flows are running here, so we can see our extension flow is running. And equally, we can see that the high-value donor field has not been set. We're now running the next entry or next contact that is in the notification. Let's check that variable and just check the context. See that context is true for a donor. If we scroll down here, we can see the Salesforce duplicate rules have run and have not found an existing contact for Roadrunner. That will create a new contact or a new record. That's passed through into our extension flow. And we can see here we've got Roadrunner. As we scroll down, we have high value donor marked as true, which is exactly what we want at this point. Let's navigate back to the summary. Let's take a look at the donor record. And we can see we've successfully set the high value donor flag. The example we've used around a high value donor reflects a common pattern. Use some information from a notification to either make a decision or to set some data specific to your business. It's common to see this used a number of times within a single workflow. The scenarios can and do get more complicated, but these are generally within reach of a Salesforce Flow user. If you have any issues, we would encourage you to work through other videos and information in our knowledge base. If you need further help, we would encourage you to reach out to your Salesforce partner, or if you're stuck, get in touch with MoveData. Thanks for watching this video.